So we were just talking. So you guys have been here since 2015?
15, yeah. So almost 8 years.
Okay. What made you want to get into brewing and starting and all that kind of stuff? Tell us a little bit of the history.
Yeah, so I've always loved to cook, and homebrewing was a pretty easy extension from that. So when I was 21, 22 maybe, I started homebrewing just on the stovetop. Kind of had the hobby for about 14 years, but picked it up, put it back down, picked it up again, and then got pretty serious about it somewhere around '08 or so, and got more and more serious, started attending our local homebrewing club, which is upstate New York homebrewers,
Okay.
and competing in their contest and the state fair out in Syracuse. I went out to a couple times, and
I don't know that they did a homebrewers contest there.
they did years ago. So I think probably until right around 14, 15, something like that.
Okay.
Yep.
That's cool.
And it was the Salt City Brewers that ran it. Did pretty well in the competitions, and kind of always wanted to start my own business. Wasn't having a lot of success in the career that I went to school with, which was teaching history. It's just really hard to get a full-time job teaching history on a college level. So,
Yeah.
especially without a doctorate, and after writing 100 pages for a master's, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I can do 500 for the doctorate. So my dad is a dairy farmer and has run quite a few different businesses. He's had a part in 3 different farms and a cooperative of 30 farmers.
Wow.
And so, he kind of encouraged me to write a business plan. I had a background in construction and a background in restaurants, and it kind of all came together pretty well. It was a lot of work. 15 months of building the place, and the building was in really rough shape. It had been raining inside for 5 years or so.
Wow.
So we completely gutted it, put it back together. So when you walk in, every surface that you see, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, is either new or completely refinished.
That's wild. So, what made you pick this part of town?
Well, the really easy answer is that I live a 15-minute walk from here, so that's really awesome. And partly that, and then partly there was this awesome beer bar in town called the Tap and Mallet, and because of that, I felt like people in the Rochester area were already coming to the South Wedge for beer, and used to coming to the South Wedge to find good beer. So I thought maybe it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for us to open up four blocks away.
Yeah.
And it worked out pretty well. There's pretty good synergy. So, the first year I tried, if they were having an event, I tried not to have an event.
That's cool.
And then it just happened that the first time Bissell Brothers was in town at Tap and Mallet, we had already scheduled an event, and I was like, well, everybody will probably go to the Bissell Brothers, but we were busier because there was so much overflow from the Tap and Mallet, so people would go there first, come to Swiftwater, go back to the Tap and Mallet, vice
That's cool.
versa.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked to me. The part of me thinks that there's like back in Central New York, Syracuse, for example, I think there's almost too many breweries, and every time one opens up, I'm thinking to myself, dear God, not another one. But my good friend Tim, who owns Buried Acorn, is constantly telling me he wants more of them to open up.
Yeah, I mean, you can't start a beer trail by yourself, and I don't think that I don't know what the too many breweries is, but we're not there yet for sure.
Yeah. So you're downtown Rochester, essentially downtown Rochester's got 12. You were saying?
I believe that's right, but yeah, I might have missed one.
Yeah. And I feel like the scene out in Rochester is bigger than in Syracuse. Like there's more well-known breweries, I feel like.
Yeah, I think maybe there's a couple larger ones for sure. Rohrbox and Three Heads and obviously Genesee
Yeah.
have been around quite a while, and are pumping out some pretty serious amounts of liquid for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and maybe like just to compare it to Syracuse, maybe the boom happened in Rochester like a year or three before Syracuse. But
Yes.
I think we're all kind of on the same trajectory.
Yeah. I just opened up a restaurant in April with friends of mine, and it's called 3-1 Fried, and we're a fried chicken sandwich restaurant, but we operate inside of another restaurant. So inside of Limp Lizard Barbecue out there. And with Eat Local New York, we've got restaurants 160 across the state, and Buffalo and downstate and a couple out here. And I've seen the trend like 4 years ago of gourmet fried chicken sandwiches popping up inside of other spots.
Sure.
We just, we're like kind of the first in Syracuse, one of the first. And it's funny to see, like, in Syracuse, people are saying, oh, this is the hottest trend just now sweeping the country, and we're getting it in Syracuse. And I'm thinking, this happened 4 years ago in Rochester.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm Chicken Out is like
Yeah.
a pop up.
I'm going there next
kitchen,
Wednesday.
essentially. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. People rave about it. I've had it once and it was delicious. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. I went to Cluck and Buck last week over in Fairport. He just opened up his own spot. He started out inside of like a bar
Cool.
that he worked at, and had a kitchen, and then now he's got his own spot. And I'm going to Chicken Out next Wednesday, so I'm excited to try that.
Fun.
I've been following their stuff online for a while on social, and they do a phenomenal job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one thing I was talking to Nate about last week was the progression of his beer making from when he was home brewing to first getting started. They've been up for 3 years, but what was that like for you back when you first got started? And you've been home brewing for a while, but
Sure. Yeah. So, I think I'd answer it maybe a couple ways. Like, I'll talk to homebrewers all the time, and they're like, "Oh, what was the hardest part about starting a commercial brewery? Like, was it, specialty malt amounts or like hop utilization?" I was like, and I'm always like, "No, it was like mopping the floor that first winter, like." But until we figured out how to efficiently get the salt off the floor, that was the hardest part. So, I think in a way, brewing's the fun part. Like all the janitorial stuff, all of the just the maintenance, like anything that breaks around here, it's on me to fix it. And so that's maybe like and then the record keeping. Figuring out all the taxes to pay, making sure you're compliant with all of that stuff. Like that was the hardest part for me starting. But to get back to the fun part, I always think like if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind. Because across the country and for sure here in Rochester, like the amount of new breweries that are opening, and the level of quality is going up across the board. So a lot of the newer breweries that are opening, like the quality is higher than it was 10, 20 years ago. And then, those of us who have been around for 7, 8 years, we're actively trying to get better as well. So we're always looking for any way to like improve the product, make it a little bit better. So, I think the biggest learning curve that we've really tackled over the last 6 years or so has been dissolved oxygen. So just reducing our oxygen in order to maintain flavor over time and increase our shelf life.
Yeah. I've got a lot of questions based on everything you just said. One of them is it, like if you make, we're drinking your Kolsch right now,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, a Kolsch, I'd imagine, is more of a traditional recipe, right? It's like, listen, here are the parameters. This is a traditional beer. Stay there.
Yeah, we're not. Well, I mean, you can get weird with it. So, Genesee has the tropical Kolsch and the the Ruby Red Kolsch, and I don't know about Syracuse, but that's gone over incredibly well in Rochester. For us, I think we like to leave those German beer styles alone and just make as close of an example of that style, kind of like emulate some of our favorites from Germany, and really bring that over here and have it available, fresh, local,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
So is there ever like a recipe that you want to mess around and like experiment a little with and change things?
Yeah, so we change everything. So, like we made this same basic Kolsch recipe once, and it was good, not great. And I did a bunch of research into water, the water chemistry in Cologne, and tried to emulate that, and it just made it sparkle a lot more. So there's more things that we make that I want to try and tweak a little bit than there are things where I'm like, nope, leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that? I'm not an expert when it comes to beer or brewing, besides the fact that I know what I like to drink, and I like to experiment and try different things I haven't tried before. But I have this conversation a lot with friends about is the job for like a local craft brewery. Are they trying to, I shouldn't say the job, are they trying to actively expand the average drinker into more of a beer enthusiast, or just try and get more regular beer drinkers?
Sure. I think there's a couple things I would say. Like, first off, like I say this all the time, like, we're not really in the business of making beer. We're in the business of selling beer, and we can only make the beer that we'll sell. But sometimes it's more a question of volume. So we are set up to make we can really make anywhere between 5 gallons and 650 gallons of one style at a time. So sometimes it's not a matter of, is this a good I don't want it to stifle our creativity just because we can't sell 650 gallons.
Yeah.
So then it's just my job to match what we're making with how much we make. So,
Yeah.
A friend of mine is in sales, and he's like, I'll sell anything, but if you send me a smoked Marzen, then maybe I want this much of it. So that there are a lot of people that smoky flavors will turn them off. So maybe if we make a smoked Marzen, maybe it's a 15-gallon batch rather than a 650-gallon batch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Has there been a beer over these years that you've done, like maybe it's something you were just really into, research the hell out of it, really happy that you put this beer together, but then just couldn't sell it?
Oh, absolutely. We had a Saison with sage that I was like in love with. Yeah. And the reception wasn't bad, but it didn't move terribly fast. Like, and part of that is the style. Like, we're a lot of our beer goes out through our tap room, and some of that, some of the beers like Saison with sage. A lot of our regulars want to try it once, maybe twice, and might enjoy it, but then they'll sit here and crush like 5 IPAs or 5 Kolsch's or something like that. So, sometimes a beer doesn't move as fast as we want, but it's not because it's not well received, and it's not because it's bad. It's just because maybe people don't want to drink more than 3 of them in a sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably certain beers that are meant for the 1 or 2 and not the 12.
Yeah, for sure. And, I like making those beers too. So then it's just a matter of like, how much do we make? Like, do we bottle it? Do we can it to move a little bit more volume? Do we send it out to distribution? Do we keep it in-house? So it's kind of a constant juggling act to figure out, new stuff that we're making. Where's it going to go? How are we going to get it gone? And, whatever the timeline we're hoping for. If it's IPA, then we're hoping for like a month or 6 weeks. If it's, like we have a pub ale on tap right now. For that, I'm fine if it's gone 6 months, like it can live here for 6 months, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never really managing social media for Willow Rock back home. It's interesting to hear you say that, because in my head I'm thinking to myself, all right, this beer just came out, so now it's my job to kind of create the
The buzz.
Yeah, the buzz for it to
Yep.
get that out of here in like a month. Like,
Yep.
and then they've got this, I think it's like a 10 or a 12, or maybe it's a 12 percenter. It's a barley wine, we made it, and the bottles have been there for a while.
Yep.
And every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, I want to post about that to get it out of there.
Sure.
But people just aren't going after it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's like a seasonality sort of thing. Like, I know I am much more likely to go for a taste of a Russian Imperial Stout or a barley wine, or even like a porter in the wintertime than I am in July.
Yeah.
Not everyone's like that, but I think a lot of people drink fairly seasonally, so they'll skew a little bit more towards lagers and IPAs in the summer, and then a little darker in the winter.
Yeah.
Yes, and then kind of jumping back to what I was just saying is that another beer that we make, excuse me, it's a 15.3% barrel-aged stout, and we serve it in 10-ounce pours, and I think it's probably a bad idea for anybody to have more than a couple. So, that's obviously going to go a lot slower than, a Kolsch that we're serving in 16-ounce pints or Steins, and is 5-ish% so that you can drink 3 or 4 and still get home just fine.
Yeah. It's I don't I'm as you're talking about that, I'm thinking like, I wonder, I've not yet to stumble across a brewery that's like trying to be a purist or like really snooty. Like I'm probably if it's available, I'm gonna buy a 4-pack before I leave, and I'm gonna go straight to Buried Acorn, and we're gonna do a video of me and Tim chugging one of your beers.
Sounds great.
Because that's his thing,
Yeah,
right?
yep,
And so now we're doing these chug contests once a week on their social media. I have yet to meet, like, I'm trying to think, like, as we're talking about, and I'm thinking about all these questions of like flavors and beers to sell and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, it's something to enjoy, obviously, but most people are drinking them to feel something.
For sure. Yeah, and as far as snootiness goes, like I'm always been a believer in like try everything but drink what you like.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, you had to try everything that was put in front of you on a plate.
Okay.
So, like I think that's just stuck with me. I'd never liked beets. I don't know. They taste like dirt. Every time to this day, if beets are on the table, I'm going to try one. I know I won't like it, but I'll just try it anyways. But then I'll go back for the asparagus or whatever.
Yeah.
Any other vegetable other than beets, I'm down. But
That's
I
pretty
just
funny.
can't do it. So, I always encourage people, customers, friends, whatever, try everything, but with an open mind. But if you don't like it, don't feel like that's saying anything bad about you. You're just finding out what you enjoy and what you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild. You were talking about like trying to stay up on trends in the beer industry. Where do you as a brewer look for those things?
We're kind of fortunate that we get given a lot of beer by customers, other brewers, friends, whatever. So that's a big part of it. and we stay in pretty close contact in the Rochester area with each other, and we share each other's beers. We get together once a month for a meeting, which has no agenda.
Yeah.
The only agenda is that we always take a picture to post on social media. That's it. So we the first rule is no business, no sales guys, like
Nice.
or what I should say is like no people trying to sell stuff to brewers.
Yeah.
So nothing against them. It's just like we already have the New York State Brewers Association, who's that more like formal business oriented organization. They do a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So we don't want to do that all over again.
Right.
We just want to have this group in Rochester where we get together and hang out and try each other's beers every month. So that's pretty awesome. I've definitely taken some inspiration from that. I love getting inspiration from cocktails. So we made like a smoked grapefruit Paloma last spring that I was
Wow.
like, pretty thrilled with.
Yeah.
Couple years ago, I made we made a smoked habanero beer with mango, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. One of my best friends lives around the corner and has a kitchen bar that's maybe one of the best cocktail bars in Rochester, so that's kind of fun. So I brought some over to him to try, and he's like, oh, I got this tequila. We should try it with tequila.
Oh, that's
So we tried that, and that was pretty fantastic. So then we actually, it was during COVID, which allowed us to can cocktails. So then we found this really cool spirit from Hollerhorn Distillery that's an hour south of here, so in the Finger Lakes, and it was barrel-aged maple spirit that was tasted about as close as I could imagine anything tasting to like a mezcal or a tequila in this that's made in New York. So we bought a bunch of their stuff and blended it and canned cocktail. So that was kind of fun to see it go full circle. Kind of being inspired by a cocktail originally, and then bringing up making beer and then turning the beer back into a cocktail.
Yeah, that's really cool. Huh. Do you have a farm license here?
We do.
Okay. Yeah. I run a bar back home as well, and it's on a farm, and so they have a farm license, and that's been really challenging, building a bar program and a cocktail menu with a farm license.
For sure. It's always been on, well, not always, but for probably 5 years, it's been on the wish list of like, we should figure this out and like, just do like a cocktail or two a week and like maybe rotate through some stuff. And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have made it happen here and there, but not as a dedicated all the time program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really expanded what I know is available in New York State, for distilleries, which is there really is some great stuff out there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we do. I just started a cocktail series of videos. We do this thing called Tales from the Bar, and then I'm just doing like recipe videos, and so having sort of that freedom to go and use whatever I want over there, but then having to be a little bit more creative with the stuff we do at the farm it's challenging. It's fun, but like I said, you really start to kind of have to get creative and mess around with stuff.
For sure, yeah. I like tequila cocktails or mezcal cocktails, and that's a tough one for me. I'll come up with an idea and be like, oh, I really want like a really smoky mezcal for this, and just can't. Unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to grow agave in New York State, apparently.
Yeah, we have not. So what's it? I mean, you were saying 60% of your sales are in-house? So, what was it like kind of getting into like beer distribution? Did you start off like year one with trying to wholesale and get yourself out there?
We didn't. You know, starting a bar was enough
Yeah.
for the first 6 months, and then I always intended to have a pretty strong food component to Swiftwater, and we had to open. You know, like, all right, the building's basically built. The brewery is making beer. The tap lines are serving beer. The kitchen isn't set up to pump up food, and also like we didn't have the staff for it at the beginning, so I didn't want to start with bad food. I thought it was better just to hold off and once we figured out how to run the bar component, then tackle the food.
Yeah.
So 6 months in or so, we started slowly introducing menu items, and that was pretty great. And then, you know, I got a lot of requests for distribution. We were making enough beer that we could send some out, so we started self-distributing beer, and I did that for probably a year and a half before we signed with a distributor. And distributing beer is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's, you know, getting to know the person who's buying it in person or by text or email or however they prefer, and then organizing what they're buying and then actually getting the beer to them. And basically, after a year and a half of that, I decided that my passion really wasn't lugging half-barrel kegs, which weigh like 180 pounds, into basements. So we signed with a statewide distributor, and that's been pretty helpful just to let us expand beyond, you know, what we sell in-house and ship beer around the state. So I feel like that's overall been a pretty good relationship, but it is quite a different aspect of our business for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is that distributor?
They're Remarkable Liquids out of Albany.
Okay, cool. I'm asking because I'd love to bring some on at the farm. We've got 12 breweries, I think, and I've got 20 different beers represented. We only do cans because they make their own hard cider at the farm. The farmers do, so it's mainly an apple farm. It's an attraction-based farm. You know, it's all they grow fruit, but it's only meant for you pick stuff.
Cool.
And so, yeah, so I'd love to bring some of that on because I've got pretty much everybody in Syracuse in there now, and I've brought in a couple. Who else was there? I think there was one or two from Rochester, but yeah, it's beer distribution. Talking to like Tim a lot, talking to friends. Beer distribution can suck.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's hard work for sure. Yeah.
I did a podcast with Tim maybe 4 years ago, and when they first opened, their sole focus was distribution. I think COVID changed that a lot from people I've talked to, that they've shifted their focus to on-site sales more than anything. And I see more breweries opening up new, like, multiple tap rooms now because of that.
Sure.
Than they are focusing on trying to get their beer in every possible city that they can.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, the distribution game has gotten really competitive for sure. And yeah, so it's when if you go out with the intention of selling beer, there's a lot of other good beer out there that you're selling against, and even if your beer is very good, there are so many places now that are rotating through stuff that it does make it challenging for both the distributor and the brewery to know how much of one style to make, or like one brand to make. It definitely becomes a lot more challenging to plan and do that balancing act of like how much of this product should we make, and where should we send it. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much do we put in half barrels? How much do we put in sixtels? How much do we put in cans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could not imagine trying to guess. I mean, I'm sure over time you kind of get those trends that develop, obviously, but yeah, that's challenging.
Yeah, I mean the more you make of something, the easier it gets because you have a track record to look back on. And there's like three varieties that we try to consistently keep in stock, but everything else we're brewing something new every week, you know. So that's for me the fun part is like always having new stuff to put on draft, but it absolutely makes things more challenging as far as the planning perspective goes, figuring out how to package it and where it goes, but then also like when we buy hops, we're projecting for the next year and a half or so. So, you know, sometime over the next week or so, I need to look into my crystal ball and see how much of X hop we'll use in the between now and February of 24. So it definitely makes it challenging just keeping that in balance, not having too much of one hop this year so that it starts getting old, but then also not running out. So, yeah, that can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's it like working with? Because like some of the companies have closed, right? So since the pandemic, what's it like having to source? Because I imagine you guys do a decent amount of volume if you're going up to as much as you are. So what's it like having to source so much of your stuff from New York State? Has that gotten more difficult?
For sure, yeah. We've worked with two monsters and four hop farms that have gone out of business, or just decided that it wasn't worth it to harvest hops anymore. So yeah, sometime in the next week, I need to get on the horn to our current hop farmers, but then also, you know, there's a few varieties that we like to buy from New York that that we only know of one. Only one of our hop farmers grows that certain variety. So now it's looking elsewhere in New York State to find. Hopefully, we can find another farmer that grows that particular hop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a constant challenge for sure, and yeah, and just you know, I don't know the monsters that we've worked with that have gone out of business. It's kind of sad because like we finally get in a really good rhythm of like they have all the product that we need and they know what we're looking for, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, go now we have to go find somebody new. Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, right now we're working with Murmuration malt quite a bit, and they can't quite keep up with the amount of malt that we need. So, you know, then we have to supplement and look around for other stuff elsewhere. Yeah.
So you can snap your fingers and you can change one thing about the industry on your end.
Oh, geez. I don't know. More money would be good. I don't know. I always joke that you know, brewing is no way to make enough to buy a Jaguar. You know, and that's definitely true. I think and I think also, you know, one thing that's come out of COVID on the money end is that for decades, centuries maybe, like service staff has always been underpaid, and now I think, you know, because of the labor crunch, I feel like we've all had to hand out a whole lot of raises, and I think that's eventually going to be, I think it's, you know, the moral thing to do and great for our staff. But I think eventually, too, it'll also make for a more sustainable industry if we have dedicated, passionate people who can afford to make a career out of this. I think that'll be absolutely a plus for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm in a group message with Tim from Bearded Acorn and Keith Redhead from wow, why am I blanking? Woodland Farm Brewery out in Utica.
Yep. Yep.
And with Tim started a show, and I told him I said I'll film every episode if you let me release it on Eat Local New York, and it was called Will It Ferment, and so every week they just take random things to see if they can make beer out of it or alcohol out of it.
Fun.
We started it during the pandemic, and the concept was everything shut down. You have to get drunk. What are you going to do?
Sure.
So one week they took, I think it was just before or after Easter, they took their daughters who are like 7 years old to the dollar store and gave them $5 and then brought them home and they had to make beer out of it or alcohol out of it. And Keith has a video of his daughter buying all this candy, and the woman behind the counter goes, "Well, you're getting all this candy. What are you going to do with it?" And this little girl goes, "We're going to make beer out of it."
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But so we're always joking in there about, how they're millionaires and they can do whatever they want. And for some reason on my algorithm on social media, I've been getting this ad lately for, it's like that diner cartoon game, but now it's for breweries. And so the ad that I always get, it's a picture of a cartoon brewer, and the copy says, "Make beer, sell cans, become a millionaire."
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, if it was only that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on the Will It Ferment, a big part of our food program here is we make our own bread, and then I've also been trying to over the years we've made like sauerkraut and kimchi, and right now I've got some hot peppers fermenting for hot sauce, so it's
awesome.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
As far as I'm not really sure beyond that what I would change. To tell you the truth. Yeah.
It's it's fascinating for me to talk to brewers about it and just the business and what it's like. You're talking about like mechanical issues and things breaking. I think of food truck owners.
Sure.
They say like one of the most important things for a food truck owner to have is a great mechanic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And or know how to do it yourself.
Yeah. So we've been kind of fortunate in Rochester and to have a company called Ultimate Brew Service, and now they're going out to Syracuse as well. And they will fix anything that breaks basically in the brewing side. So that's fantastic. I've got a really good kitchen refrigeration guy, so that's really important. But and then I have other friends in the trades that are good tradespeople, so they're too busy to actually do the work, but they'll always take my phone call or text and tell me how to fix it. So that's pretty fortunate too.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you would give to somebody who's either just starting out or like has a brewery, or somebody who's wanting to get into it?
I think if you're getting into it, if you're interested in opening a brewery, I got really good advice, which was budget for everything down to napkins. So just everything that's going to cost money should have a line in your budget somewhere. So, I think the more you can build in that cost, and then, costs always overrun. So just when I was doing it, if I looked up the napkins I wanted to buy and they were $2 a piece, I figured on $2.50 because it's, by the time you're open, it's probably going to be more expensive. And if the napkins aren't, then the plates are, or something like that. So, I think really come in with a very good idea of how you're going to do everything, have all those things planned out, because once you get into the building stage, there's so many things that you can't anticipate that you'll be focused on, that if you have that really easy plan of here's the lights I'm going to order, then that makes everything go a lot smoother. And there's the old line that everything costs twice as much and takes 3 times as long, or something like that. That's definitely the case. We were actually pretty close to on budget through construction, but we did run over. So
Yeah.
As conservative as I tried to be with laying out the finances, we still got to the point where it's like, all right, we might not be ready to open a kitchen, but we got to open because we need to get some money back in the door. And then, I think that just the more you can prepare for like the business aspect of it, the permitting aspect, paying taxes, reporting to the state, the TTV,
Yeah.
getting brand label registrations. Like the first time you do it, it's a lot of work just to figure out how to do it. And it gets a little bit easier over the years, but it's still a pretty big time suck for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the more prepared you can be going in and know how to do it, the less stress you'll have. And I don't know, I went in expecting to work 100 hours a week for 5 years, and then 5 years in, I met with like a lot of my coworkers and like the managers here, and I was like, hey guys, I want to like get it down to like 50, 60 hours this year. And it was going really well for about a month, and then that was February of 2020. So once COVID happened, I was right back into working like crazy trying to figure out like the next business plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you able to shut it off when you leave here?
I need to get out of town in
Yeah.
order to shut it off for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So my last question is, do you have a fixed point that you're hoping to take things in the next, maybe it's going back so you can get back to 50, 60 hours, but in the next 5 years or 2 years or whatever it is that you're saying, all right, I want to be here?
Yeah, I think it's just make it more sustainable, a little bit more sustainable financially. We've always been like our first 5 years. We were always like profitable, not like incredibly profitable, but profitable is a win for a new restaurant, bar, brewery. And then, the last 3 years or so have been really rough, but there's been enough like government assistance to like make up for basically all the loss of revenue.
Yeah.
And now, after this year, that financial assistance from the government is, I would imagine, is going away. I'm not planning on anything more in that regard. So it's just making sure that after we are done with the financial end of COVID, hopefully the other end too, that we're in a new normal where everything's in the black at the end of the year. So, that's taken up a lot of thought for sure. And then also make sure it's sustainable so that we can hand out raises and pay our people what they deserve to make. And then probably the last bit that will fall into place is figure out how we can hire and train up that one more person so that I can work like a normal human.
Yeah.
Yep. So hopefully that happens too. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for having me in. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Great to meet you.
Yeah. And anybody who's in Rochester or coming through or just wants to come out here and get a great beer, come check out Swiftwater.